Welcome back to Buying Sandlot. I'm Kyle Pagan, and as always, joined by Kyle Scott. Happy Friday to those out there. On today's episode, we get into what's trending on the timeline with a jam-packed week of news and takes from the uncertainty around Norway's youth sports model. D1 Training's launching a new verified testing platform. USA Baseball changes the bat specs for high school, and more. Let's get right into it. Kyle, I know you saw this. USA Bat takes over BB Core from the NCAA and adds new bat specs to high school. Give you a little bit of summary on it for the people. USA Baseball and NFHS announced they're expanding new drop weights for high school baseball starting in 2028. Drop 3 has been the standard, but now high schoolers will be able to use drop 4, 5, 6. For those who might not understand what I'm talking about, drop 3 is the numerical difference between the bat's length and its weight. So if a bat is 31 inches and 28 ounces, it's a drop 3. Why are they doing this? USA Baseball President John Gall says, we've seen too many athletes entering high school baseball struggle with the immediate jump to the drop 3 weight and then walk away from the game. This rule change creates flexibility for players to continue building strength, refining mechanics, and developing bat speed over time before making the jump to USA BB Core. And for those wondering, BB Core metal bats are designed to limit the trampoline effect, the one that we all used in the 90s and the early 2000s, and perform like traditional wood bats and limit exit velocity. Now, why does this matter? Because this totally lit a fire, I would say, on baseball Twitter, from heavy criticism from coaches, former MLB players, average Joes, claiming someone's going to get killed if an MLB prospect can essentially swing a 37-31. I've personally talked to a couple coaches. They kind of echo the same sentiment. One even said that they see 13-year-olds right now swinging a drop 5 with an exit velo in the 90s. Now, that might be an outlier. I don't know. But on the other end, there has been pushback by other people using data. The Bat Doctor, I know, Kyle, we're fans of the Baseball Bat Bros. They've pushed back on it. They claim a lighter bat does not increase bat speed, and the less mass should mean the less exit velo. So I'll hand it over to you. You got anything on this? You know, there's a potential safety issue involved. We could see an uptick in participation on the high school level. Recruiting data and player development could change for the NCAA level as their drop is a little different. And not to mention, fantastic business opportunity for the sporting goods stores. Now they're selling more bats. Where do you want to take it?
Well, listen, I think I could weigh in on this one as someone who has had their rib broken with a comebacker off a wood bat, right? My rib was broken 3 years ago at Phillies fantasy camp. Now, I grew the 60-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle to a late 30s former Division I player that I had no business trying to blow my quote-unquote fastball by. Hit it right back at me, broke my rib. It hurts, right? I was 60 feet with a wood bat. Right. So these things, these injuries aren't exclusive, but in all seriousness, hey, pitchers can get hurt, right? Like, it happens. We see it happen, and it can happen. It's not just MLB speeds. It can happen at all levels. I'm glad it only hit my rib, right? Not directly in my chest plate or my face. I worry a lot about my kids. My older son pitches. My younger son probably will too. I pitched growing up, not like super competitively, but into high school age years. 45 feet. I mean, I've seen balls hit at 45 feet by rec 9-year-olds that, if they hit the kid in the wrong spot, are going to do some damage, right? As the travel and the U-trip bats are a little hotter, right? And paradoxically, the better players, I think, are more susceptible to this because, at least, again, I'm dealing from my own eyes with like 10-year-olds. The better players throw harder, they throw straighter, and they swing harder, right? And that combination produces, and then the travel players are using U-trips, right? So that combination produces much more line drives than the rec level player who's only allowed to use a USA bat. So to me, it's like you're giving the hotter bats at age 10. I know we're not talking about this exactly, but you're giving the hotter bats at age 10 to the more developed kids who are hitting faster pitches, and that two combination produces much hotter line drives. So I think there's a little bit of a safety gap in general. It's a general worry. You can't get injuries out of the game for pitchers. I don't know enough about the details of this. I know what you said. There are proponents who are saying, hey, like the bigger drop number for a high school age kid doesn't increase the exit velo because it's a lighter bat and therefore there's less mass. So it may have more velocity, but if there's less mass, you're ending up in the same spot. And the BB core is engineered in such a way that they still have to perform by the same specifications and act like a wood bat. And in other words, like, hey, the drop 6 may be engineered in such a way that it's not coming off hotter, even swung at the same speed or a higher rate of speed. So I think there's a little bit of, I don't know. I suspect there's a little bit of both going on here. There's probably some math that says it's not as dangerous as people think, but at the same time, players are now growing up using, somewhat outrageous bats. They're swinging these, drop 9, 10, whatever it is at age 10. And then they get to 13 and 14, and now this bat feels heavy, right? So, I don't think that's best for the development of the athlete. And then go a step further. And I would say, in my experience, the bigger drop off at 13 as a player, as a parent, just as a general human being who understands baseball, it's a lot of times people can't make the throw from the pitcher's mound or third base once the field goes 90-60, right? So I'm sure there's some kids who struggle with the bat weight, but if they're struggling with the bat weight, is that a result of the bat being too heavy or the fact that they grew up swinging these like outrageously engineered bats that don't simulate anything in reality? I suspect it's more of the latter than the former.
Yeah, a lot of some of the pushback was from some people was if you're not swinging a drop 3 by 14 or 15 years old, you're probably not going to be recruited anyway. Now, obviously, playing high school baseball is not all about being recruited; it's about experience and stuff. But there was some sentiment there as well. I think the optimist in me would be thinking like, as the scrutiny for safety and background checks and all this stuff comes down from Congress, and we're seeing more and more of it, and we're seeing more stuff in the news. I gotta imagine USA Baseball, BB Core, which is the gold standard right now in baseball, you got to imagine they've done thousands and thousands, maybe millions of simulations to be like, hey, we just can't implement this rule and then put player safety, in jeopardy because the pushback and it would be terrible. I mean, it would be BB Core would have to go out of business essentially and stuff due to like lawsuits or whatnot and everything. So I got to imagine that's a thing. The skeptic in me, maybe the conspiracy theorist in me is like, what's up with the participation? Who from MLB is clocking USA Baseball saying, hey, we got to get participation up a little bit. Hey, we got to get bat sales up a little bit. So two double-edged side of the coins right there.
Well, this is the question I would have. It is if you're going to say it's safer or not worse, and I saw some of the guys doing equations, which are well over my head on X, but let's assume they're accurate, right? I assume the outcome there is this bat swung harder with less mass produces the same exit velo, not more, right? Or even less. Some people have argued even less. If it's a lighter bat, it's a whole momentum thing. Fine. The question I would like to know the answer to, and I'm not sure how you measure it, is that lighter bat in the hands of a more capable, stronger player more likely to produce repeated sweet spot contact, right? This isn't just about the speed of the bat coming off the ball. That has to be married with the fact that the guy timed it perfectly to hit a line drive right up the middle, 5 feet off the ground, right? Like that is, that's kind of like the apex of baseball hitting if you're able to produce that. So as the lighter bat, it's not just the speed, it's the likelihood and frequency that which someone is hitting line drives directly up the middle. I suspect the math isn't just a simple equation on that, but it's more of a, preponderance of baseball data things. This guy more likely to hit line drives when he swings a lighter bat. Those two things have to be taken hand in hand. And I think a lot of arguments just in society in general, they will win on the math, right? They'll win on the laboratory controlled result of the argument, but then it doesn't take into account the real world consequences of that thing, right? So that's again, I don't know the answer there. That would be my question. And maybe we get somebody on and talk about it at some point. But I think you should really, this is one of the things I worry about most in sports, especially as a baseball dad. So like, I think everything should be striving toward keep the pitcher safe. If the kid can square up the ball, it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter if it's coming off that hard in little league or high school, right? If he can square it up, right, from a player development standpoint, even better if it doesn't go far, right? If he's able to square up a heavy ball, by the time he gets to college and progresses, now he actually can work with a wood bat.
Yeah, this will be interesting from a couple things. I talked to a coach. When I talked to a coach, he said, I wonder if this is USA Baseball getting in front of the fact that pitchers are now throwing harder. So that's why they need these lighter bats for kids to increase their bat speed and hopefully get onto the ball, because that's what a lot of people are saying. Like you said, I mean, kids are bigger, faster, stronger here. Another thing is, will D1 prospects, college prospects, MLB prospects, will they swing four, drop five, drop six? Because right now in the NCAA, all they allow is drop three. That will change recruiting data and verified data, which we'll get into later in this episode, being like, hey, this kid swings a drop six. Can he still produce the results that he's producing in college when they require swinging a drop three? So that might just be, maybe people are seeing a headline right now, and it'll come out that, hey, most kids are still going to swing drop three. Maybe they'll go down to drop four, going forward. But we still need data. We need all this data, and we need to see kind of these examples, and it's not going to happen until 2028. So we'll argue about it in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Let's get on to our next topic, the Norway model. But before we get into that, we want to thank Black Magic Design for sponsoring the show. Listen, it's a new Black Magic Design read, so don't skip this ad. The Tropical Sevens, held annually in Tampa, bills itself as the largest youth rugby event in North America. Every kick, phase, scrum, and try at this year's edition was streamed thanks to Black Magic Design. Youth sports production company Game On Live Studio uses BMD products in all its work, including its role broadcasting Tropical Sevens. 250 plus teams and 750 plus matches across 15 fields and 1.2 million square feet over 4 days of frenetic action streamed live in its entirety at a level not previously seen in the sport. Everyone who watches youth sports, athletes, parents, and grandparents, coaches, college recruiters, has come to expect streaming that looks and sounds professional. Black Magic Design can deliver just that for your club, event, facility, or school. Our suite of affordable products are the same high quality as those used by professional sports teams and in Hollywood, delivering easy-to-learn multi-cam streaming that's open new revenue streams. For more information, visit blackmagicdesign.com. All right, on to the Norway model. It's a bad day to be a Norway model stan, I'll say that. If you haven't seen it yet, Sportico published an article that says Norway's youth sports model everyone fantasizes over is facing uncertainty due to economic pressure and Gen Z changing their consumer habits. Some major quotes from the story. One is, although Norway is often cited as a good example of a nation that creates opportunities for children, some feel that sports in Norway are moving away from play, community, and a sense of belonging to a club, and increasingly toward performance and professionalism. Another one said social media and fitness tracking platforms like Strava have grown popular, especially among Gen Z, who value more individualized athletic pursuits over traditionally community-based Norwegian sports and recreation systems. And the last one, which will probably make some people's eyes widen, costs for specialized soccer academies in Oslo can now run as high as $3,000 per player per year, Deloitte notes. That's triple the average annual U.S. family spend of $910 on soccer, according to the 2025 Project Place survey from the Aspen Institute. Kyle, I'm excited to hear your reaction to this.
All right, so let me start off. I think that last thing you said is an apples to oranges comparison. We're talking about the most expensive youth soccer club in Norway, comparing that to the average across the board primary sport or soccer spend in the U.S. from Aspen Institute. I said 3 months ago that part of our premium offering is getting better data, especially around the participation in the club side. So we surveyed 63 club operators. The average club, and there's a mix of independently owned, nonprofit, PE-backed, and a couple of franchises and schools in there as well. So it's not nationally representative, but I think it's certainly directionally accurate. What we found is that the median price of club participation is $2,900. Soccer actually came in, of the 15 of the 63 clubs we surveyed, again, not nationally representative, came in at $2,800. So it wasn't more expensive than the mean. We put out some data on this on X yesterday, but I think it's just important to know that number. It doesn't really prove anything, but $2,800 is roughly the median soccer and club costs in sports in the U.S. And this, so the 910 is a little misleading, right? Like, so I think you need to say, what is a average club cost? That's probably a better number the Sportico could have used there. That aside, listen, I always think about incentives in these arguments is who is making the argument, whether that's a for-profit company, a nonprofit, federation, a think tank, right? Two things can be true, as the great Kevin Kincaid once said. You can be well-meaning and well-intentioned and believe the numbers, and also have a incentive um, to say or do a certain thing, right? So in this case, before I kind of dump on the Norway model, which I'm not going to, but this story is coming from the Norwegian Sports Federation's president, right? Well, this is someone who's incentivized for that country to further fund youth sports. So anything in their tax bill that makes it seem like they may be getting away from funding youth sports is going to breed these comments from him. So we should take this with a small grain of salt that the person who is informing the Sportico story has a vested stake in there continuing to be a high level of public funding in Norway. So I think we should at least acknowledge that out of the get-go. We should also acknowledge that the people in the US who are sort of stumping for more public funding, running things through community organizations, right, are the nonprofits and the think tanks that have, I think, the most to gain and continued relevance through that model, right? If you're the primary source of kind of data and thought leadership on community level participation, then certainly there is an incentive to continue, for the country to double down on that, because that's a self-preservation tactic. Again, I think both things can be true. You can be well-meaning and accurate, but also your view on things can color the outcome you're prescribing. I would assign that to us too. We have an audience of mostly for-profit people. So a lot of times I talk about the benefits of for-profit. That also aligns with, candidly, our business interests, right? So I think it's worth acknowledging that. That said, we kind of dumped on the Norway model in the newsletter the other day, saying hey, this is the first time Norway's made the World Cup since 1998, I think, right? They haven't been in the UEFA since 2000. So is their World Cup success the result of their fun to love discovered the joys of play Norway model, or is it because they have Erling Haaland, who is a once in a generation athlete, has scored in 14 plus games, has 7 of their 12 goals, I think 26 goals over those 14 international games. He's clearly he's a once in a generation talent, and clearly the reason Norway is still playing in the World Cup. He is and yes, he was actually born in England. His father played in the Premier League. His mother was a heptathlete. They moved back to Norway when he was 3. At age 5, he was measured. He set the world record for doing standing long jump at 1.63 meters, a record which he's held for a while or even still stands, right? So we read all about the Norway model, not caring about competition, not trying to over professionalize kids. And yet here we have their single best player is a physical freak in many ways, is the product
of Viking. He's a Viking.
He's a Viking. He's the product of professional athlete father, a record-setting or award-winning heptathlete mother who was having his long jump measured while he was still in kindergarten, right? So I don't think Holland is should be the face of the Norway model, because he's a little bit of an outlier and was treated as such from an early age. And he went to a soccer academy and clubs, 100-year-old soccer academy and clubs starting at age 5, right? So a little bit of an outlier there. But the Sportico article, I think, goes a step further and ironically shows that what's happening in Norway is Gen Z doesn't want to kind of go through this country level participation paradigm. They want to use apps like Strava and, hey, what do you know? More individualism and liberty, right? We want to measure our own metrics. I want to go for a run and measure it on my own. I don't need to go through some system. More for private clubs, more professionalization. So ironically, we sit here from afar and talk about the benefits of the Norway model, more community involvement, right? And the same people who talk about that are the ones who will be more ingrained to help, kind of further that participation. And yet over in Norway, at least according to this one guy, again, has a vested stake in kind of pushing for more public funding, things are becoming more professionalized and they're skating in the direction of the American model. So I think nuance is often lost on these things. And James continues to point out, maybe not in Norway, but in many other countries where we talk about, hey, their academy model's great, it's free to play, right? Yeah, it's great for the kids who make it. It's terrible for everybody else. They're highly competitive. The academics are nil. Athletes are commoditized. They're literally sold off, right? And then those that don't make it don't have an education and are, God knows what they're doing today, right? So I think we always think the grass is greener on the other side, and we have plenty of problems here, but I think we utopianize the Norway model and other models. And the Sportico article was the most structural rebuke on that. I think that there is probably better than my Erling Haaland hot take.
No, I mean, we're seeing the Norway model become the U.S. model. I mean, and this is going to kind of just, echo your take, but like this just proves there's no perfect model in the world. There's no perfect model in business. There's no perfect model in politics. There's no personal best model in youth sports, and we fantasize about it, and it's just never true. And the nuance thing I think is perfect. I've said that before too. There needs to be more nuance in discussions and stuff. And you have the gold standard of Norway. And they're worried their economy is going to go into peril, from sports, and they can't keep kids off their phone and everything. Then you have Argentina, the previous World Cup champion, and they've got academy players living in terrible conditions. England's pulling kids out of homes and stuff at the age of 10, and it's having psychological effects on everybody. They're cutting 9-year-olds like Harry Kane because he's too fat. Like it's not. It's a true story.
I know.
So yeah, like the U.S. has its problems, but like every single youth soccer system has its problems.
And I mean, Norway funds, I mean, I've seen estimates ranging, I know there's hard, like 400 million to 3 billion, depending on how you slice the numbers, right? It's the size of South Carolina. It's like 5 million people. If you were to expand even that lower 4 million number to the US, it's like $25 billion a year in public funding, right? A lot of money. B, it's a lot easier to control the way that money is used in a country the size of North Carolina than in something as a republic as large as the United States. It has many different states and levels and collegiate participation. It's just harder to deploy that stuff. And again, listen, if the U.S. were to deploy anything like the quote unquote Norway model, the biggest proponent of that is Tom Ferry. Tom Ferry, I think, means well, right? Dedicated this part of his career to furthering these goals. So I don't mean, I think the intentions are in the right spot. But if you if the U.S. had a youth sports czar to implement the Norway model, who's the most likely candidate to be the youth sports czar to implement the Norway model in the U.S.?
I can think of one guy.
It's probably Tom Ferry. Ferry, in all seriousness. So, I think we should acknowledge that, but that doesn't always mean it's the solve. And I think this article did a good job of pointing out that, hey, Norway, a little bit more international conflict, right? Changes in tax, right? Like by 2040, they're upside down as a country. And now the country needs to say, do we really want to prioritize youth sports development to this level if we have more pressing needs? And so, I think a lot of the people right now who are talking about U.S. soccer and how to improve it are talking about, hey, the country should fund it. We hear a guy saying that Tesla and Apple should be investing in youth sports teams the way a German brewer does. Like SpaceX, Apple, I mean, these are multi-trillion-dollar companies, right? Like there is no economic incentive for them to invest in youth soccer. It is a deranged argument. And in other countries, whether it's private or philanthropy or governments, it's about national pride. America has many more sources of national pride than just being elite in one sport. We're elite in many things in the world. In a lot of these smaller countries, being elite in sports is like the badge they wear. It's the only badge. America has 500 badges. So we're like, you know what? If our soccer team loses every 4 years and there's a 2-day news cycle of people laughing, America is still the best country on earth, right? So I think we need to consider that in a lot of these arguments. And again, sometimes countries have more pressing needs than developing pro athletes. And I think maybe what this article indicates is that Norway eventually gets there. It's like, there's international conflict. We need to fund our own defense, things like that. That's more important than the soccer team. And then the one thing that Norway does is the nationally backed online gambling revenues help fund a portion of youth sports, something that's been floated and continues to get discussed here in the U.S. And I agree, like betting's a vice. I think there's lots of downsides. I mean, there's a high profile story the other day about FanDuel and Bryce Harper. Go check it out. It's not good. I think regulations is coming for betting in the US and the way it's advertised. Even if you were to take those betting profits and apply the vice to youth sports development, I think that those profits are going to slow or erode. They're facing headwinds of prediction markets eating their lunch, right? In terms of just revenue and profit. And then in addition, if there's regulation, they're not going to be able to advertise as much. And that's certainly going to impact profits. So the solve for youth sports, the best one I've heard in the U.S. is using the betting excise taxes on a state-by-state or federal level to fund youth sports. At the exact time, I think the online gambling revenues in the U.S. are probably facing the most pressure they have since everything was kind of legalized in 2018. And again, Norway is showing what happens when there's pressure on that model. That was in the argument, is if there's other betting operators come into Norway as is being proposed, it's going to impact the tax dollars that flow to youth sports. So again, there's never a silver bullet here. And you dig 2 levels deeper and you can see why, nothing is utopic the way some people make it out to be.
So if youth sports needs more capital, and it might not be the betting tax going forward, and I bring up Santiago right here, who has the famous line of youth sports needs more capital. Where does that come from, you think?
Private investors, right? I mean, you discuss again, like, I think I always feel like doing a podcast and having a conversation and then writing about something sharpens your view, because it forces you to kind of think through the logic of what you're saying. And I understand when we talk on a podcast, it's sometimes off the cuff. And I'm sure someone could go through everything I just said and find like little nitpicks here. Hey, this, when you're writing it, you refine it even more. So we talk about it and then we write it and it gets more refined. But, the more we do this, the more we begin to talk through some of these problems, you kind of quickly end up in, okay, well, who's paying for it? Is it the federal government? Okay, how? Right? Is it state governments? Oh, wow, there's 50 of them. That's a mess. Right? Same with regulation. Oh, wow, 50 sets of regulations, not good. Like, we need some standardization. And we ultimately just come back to, okay, like, the entrepreneurial spirit in youth sports is actually really strong. You have lots of well-intentioned independent operators, small business owners, many of them with big ideas, trying to make things better. And I mean, I would argue that throughout the history of America, that's usually what's led to American exceptionalism, right? Is the ability for people to have a profit incentive to build something better than governments have, right? This is a whole political conversation. But we see lots of these really good ideas. We see the middle school matchups of the world. We see interesting ideas on how to, have an athlete do 1 background check instead of 10. These are all backed by the incentive that if this works, it's a good business for somebody. Ironically, most of these ideas aren't to venture or PE scale yet. I was just talking to an investor the other day, and they're like, we write $20 to $50 million checks, and there's very few things in the US that can support a check of that size. And that's one of the problems. These are mostly like small to medium-sized funding problems. So I continue to think that a lot of the answer to that sometimes is just like, hey, like, let's find the incentive for somebody to build something better. Oftentimes the market wins, right? The market can be deflationary if things are done right and there's enough competition too. Which again, I think also speaks to the, hey, like, don't let people become monopolies and control entire stacks. Totally fair, accurate point.
Yeah, just go after the practices. Don't always have to go after the capital structure. But that's beside the point. Operators we've also seen in our data don't want to exit. They just want capital to expand. So just echoing your put on that. Good stuff. Good stuff on the Norway model. Let's get over to D1 Training. D1 Training, if you saw in the newsletter, led the newsletter today. They announced a new verified testing platform. D1 Training has launched the D1 Verified Testing Platform to address the ongoing issue of verified data. The youth sports training franchise aspires to have its certified recruiter-ready data become as recognized as in sports as the ACT or the SAT in academics. Cliff Marshall said, Kyle, we've talked about the companies that are building platforms that produce verified data, but no one is looked at as the single solid source of information right now in the youth sports industry yet. How do you think D1 is positioned after hearing this news?
Really well. I think the best positioned or most scaled is Scoreability guy, Brian Kruver from Scoreability. We talked to back in March, and he bought, I believe, the Camp network. So he's able to deploy some of these testing things through the Camp. So others I mentioned in the newsletter, MPI Sports, we're a partner with them. Certainly Curve Sports is investing in data and training. Santiago, shout out. Get the picture ready. Get the picture. Give me the picture.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Bam. There it is. On the radar, right? Our friends, Clubhouse Partners here in the PA area. Lots of people have ideas around how to test and standardize athlete data and verify it. To me, I've always said the challenges are twofold. I don't think this is a super insightful take, but I'll just point them out. One is the scale, like the ability to scale it, right? It's one thing to have the mechanism and verify. It's another thing to have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds, millions of athletes actually go through that system. So you have enough data. The bigger challenge is probably building the brand the way the SAT. It wasn't always the case that you need an SAT score to get into college. At some point, that became an accepted metric. FICO score, right? We accept the FICO, it's a universally accepted thing. There's 3 bureaus that do it. But generally, if you go to buy a car or a house, you're above 700, like you're good, right? Anything else, then there's scales beyond that. I think it's building the brand that someone can accept that the score is A, legitimate, and B, if you're ranking and assigning stars based on your database of all the tests you've given, that people accept that there's enough things in that database to make a 5-star, a true 5-star athlete, right? A true outlier. D1 is really well positioned to do that. I think they're at 175 locations now. They think they're going to be at 200 by the end of the year, right? They have a little bit of brand cachet. They have involvement, I think, Chris Paul and Peyton Manning on the cap table. So they have the infrastructure to do the testing, the scale at which to kind of deploy it, and then the brand cachet, at least out of the gate, to develop a universally accepted metric. Never mind all the connections in the leadership group to kind of make the right strategic partnerships at the collegiate and pro level. So it's going to be hard. It's not easy for anyone, but I think they're really well positioned to do this at some level of scale. So I like it. Smart move. And they were for sale. I don't know if that.
I was just going to say that.
For sale.
I was just going to say that. Look at you. Yep. So on the market, but maybe off the market now if they're launching platforms and they seem that they want to keep scaling and they want to be the SAT or the ACT, or maybe they'll find a buyer who shares the same vision of it. It'll be interesting to watch.
So when we covered them going for sale, this is back in February. I wrote, so Live Barn got 400 million, Sports Engine is for sale, 3Step is for sale, right? Those are some of the few things that have hundreds of millions of dollars scale in youth sports. I believe I wrote at the time, a lot of these I think represent kind of the 1.0 era of youth sports companies, right? Kind of the consolidated club and tournament thing in the case of 3Step. Certainly we've covered how Sports Engine was kind of, pretty generic software that was just kind of early to the game. And D1 at the end of the day is a training franchise. Great business, good leadership, good brand for all the reasons we just pointed out. But there's nothing super sexy there, right?
Did criticize them on that episode that they didn't have a data play, and it was kind of like buying an LA Fitness.
You did. You did.
Maybe a little mean. Maybe kind of mean, but.
Wait, let me read our thing. Here, you criticized them for the data thing. And in the newsletter, we wrote, newer, well-capitalized newer entrants are leaning into AI to improve the end consumer experience, which might represent the next leg up in scale. It's certainly possible that PE firms buying up these 1.0 companies may end up buying assets that get disrupted by larger platform plays that aggregate scheduling and tech-enabled training tools into one experience, right? Then again, strategic buyers could use these assets to become those platform players. D1, for example, brings a physical footprint many don't have. And the point there was, they have the physical footprint. They're not a data and tech platform, but they certainly have the footprint to deploy it. And lo and behold, they're doing it before the sale process, or before the sale process is completed. So who knows? Maybe they're selling, or maybe, hey, we're going to layer this on, and you get a better multiple if you have the tech and data piece in addition to your physical footprint. I'm pretty sure. Again, I'm not a genius, but I'm pretty sure that gives you a higher sale multiple when it comes time. So who knows? I'm purely speculating on that, but it is funny. We talked about this in March, and here we go. Tech and data layer. Love it. But I like it. It's their perfect move for them.
I agree. Potentially they went to the market, didn't like what they were getting. Some people came back, said, hey, where's the data play? Where's the tech play? Now they're launching the tech play. So you got to love that. You don't just build your physical body. You build your technology body as well. And D1 Training is building the technology and data body as we're speaking. I like
your heart and your brain. You build the heart. They got the heart and building the brain. Again, I'm telling you, sometimes when we speculate on these things, we've heard some stuff. We've heard nothing here. We're purely speculating. At least I am. We're purely speculating on what the motivations here in the sale process. So just want to make that clear. Sometimes we're not always speculating, but we're definitely speculating.
Last one, and we'll wrap it up. Team Travel Source update. A quick one for you. Team Travel Source filed a motion to dismiss a lawsuit in Kentucky federal court seeking to have the class action tossed. In case you missed it, a group of youth sports parents sued the Louisville-based housing firm in May on consumer fraud grounds, including allegations of junk fees, false advertising, and unlawful practices. TTS argues the plaintiffs failed to allege any actionable claim in its filing. They say stay-to-play policies are driven by operators, not TTS. TTS properly discloses legitimate booking fees. The lawsuit does not allege or support fraud by TTS. Some plaintiff claims are outside the statute of limitations, and lawsuit fails to meet various legal concepts theories. The plaintiffs now will have 21 days to respond, plus any extension requests. Interesting note, I think James had in the newsletter was TTS said it books 1.4 million hotel room nights annually and paid out over 17 million in rebates to operators only in 2025. That's some good cash for operators.
Oh, I mean, we've talked about this before, and I'm not going to just sit here and defend the practice of state of play, but it's a meaningful revenue line for operators. And if it does get kind of systematically removed, costs are going to go up, or they got to fill it with something else. Maybe sponsorship's the thing. I don't know, but it exists. Whether you like it or not, it exists, and operators count on the revenue. TTS is arguing that, hey, we're not the ones demanding people. We're just providing the tech service to enable this mechanism for operators. It's the operators who are requiring you to use it to play. So I haven't dug into the lawsuit. I imagine that's mostly true. They're kind of saying hey, we're just the tech that enables it, which feels accurate. So it's a messy thing. Again, I think some of the most extreme example of this are not good and will get unwound in some way. But at the same time, as someone who's put on a small scale event, you begin to understand why room blocks are important, right? And even if something costs 5% more through a room block, there's no guarantee that it would be even that cheap if everyone had a book independently. A lot of hotels are priced dynamically. And when there's 3 rooms left, now all of a sudden the room's $100 a night more because there's a tournament in town. So I think proponents of state of play would argue that. So I think it's finding the middle ground that allows venues to benefit from these commissions or kickbacks, that allows them to get these room blocks, right? And those things are one and the same, while at the same time not being predatory to families who have better options or simply just don't need a hotel stay because they'd rather drive 60 miles home. I think the worst cases get the media attention. I'm not sure the whole industry functions as aggressively, but it's a real thing for sure. So interesting case, definitely one worth following, because whatever the outcome is, I think is going to impact this practice. And that's the one thing in the regulatory discussion, state of play, that has bipartisan support. And, you could argue the logistics I just argued, but, there's enough support there to push back on that, I think.
Yeah. And when we talked to Congressman DeLuzio, he did talk about markups potentially in the Let Kids Play Act. Instead of going after, maybe capital structure, it goes after policies now. So this will definitely, like Kyle said, be something to watch. A little interesting to call out the operators. A little interesting to call out your customers, I thought, a little bit. But, on the other end, that's all I have.
No, it's a legal case. Oh, we have one more. The Ethan Strauss, House of Strauss.
Oh, we had the House of Strauss. Sorry. Ethan Strauss Substack. Many may know him from being an NBA reporter in the media for a while now. First time I think I've seen a media member go on record and defend private equity. And this came in the form of soccer. A good quote that came from his Substack. Check it out. I believe private equity has become a bit of a boogeyman when problems defy simple solutions. For example, I disagree with the idea that private equity is to blame for Jaylen Brown getting traded. Private equity isn't the main explanation for why American youth sports are expensive. Ambitious parents are. I say that less to blame parents, in quotes, than to acknowledge the reality that they're willing to pay a lot for their dreams. I know we've echoed the same sentiment on here before. What's your reaction to that quote?
Yeah, I mean, wide sweeping defense. I guess there's an argument that the Jaylen Brown trade has something to do with PE ownership and pro sports. I don't know. I've been following that line even as a Sixers fan.
Even the governor of Pennsylvania got in on it a little bit. He said, "Oh, it looks like they're doing some PE basketball over there in Boston. That's why they had to trade Jaylen Brown." So it's getting to the high.
Your boy. We gotta get Josh on. We gotta get Josh back on.
If he keeps making, well, he's going to have to.
Should we just wait should we just wait for him to become president to get him on?
We should wait until he makes maybe 1 or 2 quotes on youth sports, and then he can come on.
There you go.
It's
That's
not
fair.
a shot. It's not a shot at the governor. It's just what's he going to talk about with us?
That's fair. That's fair.
But-
That's fair. Yeah, and listen, not to be political here, but he has proposed solving the traffic problem around Philadelphia stadiums. That's enough to get my vote. He should just look at whatever FIFA did, right? But that would get him my vote.
And he's monitoring what's going on in the PA high school basketball state playoffs between public and non-public right now. So he might wade his way into the waters a little bit. So we might have him on in the next year.
Yeah, it's actually my strongest Kalshi bet. That's my strongest Kalshi play. I think he's at 5% to be the Democratic nominee. That's free money. Even if he doesn't become it, I think at some point becomes a 20% chance.
Wow,
it's free money.
4x,
free money,
4x,
free money. Shapiro at 5%. This is not financial advice. No, on Strauss, real quick. Agreed, right? Agreed with the general sentiment. Particularly agreed with the parents piece. And I'm in the same boat. This isn't to blame parents. I think most parents, myself included, it becomes a keeping up with the Joneses thing because you have the really ambitious parents who are willing to spend. And by and large, the people we've talked to on the record and off, club operators, other executives, investors, it's like a lot of this is fulfilling parent demand, right? I do think the tournament supply is created by tourism boards, right? And then the clubs just kind of think, they kind of like, okay, well, we got to go to these things now. They exist, right? But by and large, like parent demand is pushing a lot of this stuff. I've seen it firsthand. Like I've seen it, right? And I know everyone listening has seen it. And I think parent education, particularly around specialization, would go a long way in solving at least some of the most extreme examples of the problems in youth sports. In our club survey and our operator survey, we asked, what percentage of parents are requesting multi-sport clubs or multi-sport. These are 4-day-a-week, 9-month-a-year clubs on average. And something like 80% said parents are not asking for it. 10% said they were, 10% said, I'm not sure. And 80% are like, no one's asking for it, right? If you're a 9-month, 4-day-a-week club, you're certainly specializing in that sport, right? Soccer's worse, 10 months a year out of the clubs we surveyed, 4 days a week, right? I think we cover the downsides of specialization, both from a human level, but also from it's actually counterproductive in lots of cases to build elite athletes. Bryce Harper and LeBron James, notable young athletes, come out and said, no, play other sports. Like it develops other skill sets. There's, Tiger Woods is like the sole example of somebody this really truly worked with, right? So I think the more parents could be educated on those things, they may begin to demand or request or seek out options that are more well-rounded than 172 soccer sessions per year for an 8-year-old. That's the median in our result. 4 days a week, 10 months per year. That's 172 days per year that the median club soccer player is playing soccer. It's too much, right? It's too much. If parents were educated on that, they would show up to the club and say, hey, we want a 6-month club. Hey, you guys are well run, right? Like Rise Partners, I think, looking into other sports, maybe True Lacrosse looking in the volleyball. Like you guys are well run. Can you guys like hire some coaches in another sport? I like your program. I like what you guys stand for. But can we mix up the sports in the spring and the fall, right? Again, it always sounds like we're describing rec sports or school when we do that. But I think parent education would actually change what the demand is, and then the market would fulfill it. But if parents keep saying, hey, my kid needs to play 10 months a year to be on his or her high school soccer team, clubs are happily going to do 10 months per year of soccer. It'd be foolish not to.
The minute parent consumer habits change and they want them to change will be the minute that club sports and the model will all change, scholastic to rec to all that stuff. And I couldn't agree with that more.
And we said in the spring, like, hey, maybe that's a trend. That's a club opportunity, well-run multi-sport thing, right? And then I did the survey and I'm like, oh, parents aren't asking for this yet. So either we're wrong or we're just in the weeds, and we cover each of these studies 3 or 4 times when they've come out about the downsides of specialization. So we're aware of it, but we're living in a little bubble of this information. My kids this week, again, did a multi-sport camp. They loved it. They played a different sport every day. They did flag football. They did soccer. Really well run, for-profit thing. Again, not a club participation. It was a 1-week camp, but like loved it. Huge parent demand, like sold out in multiple towns down here. So, the market will fill the demand.
Yeah. Club rec sports is still in demand. Is that everything?
think that's it.
All right.
I think that's it. We got the MLB All-Star game next week.
Me and you, baby.
We're both going. Not together.
No, not together.
I think you have better seats than I do. I think you're being coy.
I don't know what my seats are. I was invited by a brand. I still got the cachet. I still got the brand cachet, baby.
You do. I think you got better. You may have better seats than me. Actually, we got good seats, but we might be a little higher. I'm excited. Looks like Philly's going to do a good job with it.
Bryce and Kyle Schwarber will be in the home run derby. You're going to that too. That should be a fun time. But
is Schwarber in for sure?
They're still waiting to announce somebody.
Yeah,
how is the leading MLB home run leader not going to be in the All-Star game at his own facility and stuff? So
they're just checking on his back, Jules.
I think there'll be some stuff with Chase and Mike Schmidt too. If I saw what they released today in the MLB All-Star game highlight package that they did this morning. So I know you're going to go nuts if you see Chase Utley out there in that beautifully coiffed white hair.
I get it. I should show my picture of me and Chase here. Actually, all right, this is how you bring a podcast full circle. So we started about this podcast. I'll send you the picture so you can throw it on screen. But we started this podcast talking about me breaking my rib. My picture with Chase Utley is about 4 hours after I broke my rib. I was doing a double play turning session, an infielding session with Chase Utley 4 hours later with a broken rib. And I was like, listen, this is my idol. This is the man. I can't sit this one out just because I have a cracked rib. So I took 4 Advil and had a Yingling, and then I got out there and I turned double plays to the admiring eye of Chase Utley. So that's the apex. By the way, it's the apex of my athletic career right there. That's
4 Advils and a Yingling. I don't think that's going to be in D1 Training's verified platform. It's going to be offered at D1 Training anytime soon.
Tell you it works. It
That's
works.
Awesome.
Bad for
That's
the stomach,
awesome.
but it works.
That's awesome. I'm glad you got to enjoy that. I really enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you, the listener, did as well. Enjoy your weekend. We will talk to you on Monday. GG's.
Good game.